This episode is brought to you by TaxAct. Don't do your taxes alone. Join TaxAct's National Admin Night. Admin nights are social gatherings for getting through your to-do list. So get ready for a night of fun, finding deductions, and filing taxes with TaxAct, where you can file your federal and state return for just $49 through April 8. Let's get together and get them over with. Visit taxact.com/admin-night for details.
Mi familia's more fun at Walt Disney World. Like mi papa, he's super serious. But since he met Goofy, he's been laughing all day. Or my sister. I never thought she'd try out the fast rides, but Space Mountain was her favorite. And me, I didn't think anything could feel so special.
The memories made at Walt Disney World Resort. That's pura magia.
Welcome to The Secret Life of Cookies, where we try to solve the world's problems through the miracle of carbohydrates, one recipe at a time, with host Marissa Rothkopf and her dog, Bosco.
Hello and welcome to The Secret Life of Cookies. My guest today is investigative reporter Marisa Kabas, who has become the walking, talking expert on all things George Santos. And we get down to the nitty-gritty, which, also, her name is Marissa, so really, you got to listen for the double Marissa whammy of an episode. Marissa and I also had an interesting and an inspiring talk, which you can hear when you listen to the podcast, about being shameless. It's got its bad connotation, like George Santos is of the world, and then it's also got its positive connotation of being in charge and putting yourself and your thoughts, everything out there without apology. So first, let me be a little shameless. Let me thank you all for helping to make my Substack newsletter a Substack publication of the year, which is a true honor. And also, without apology, but with hope and gratitude, if you can please share this podcast with friends and give it a review in the Apple App Store, that would be fantastic. The more reviews, the more listeners, the bigger, the better, the rounder, the sweeter this podcast can be. So I thank you for that. On with the show. So it's a pleasure to have you here. You are here not just because of your freelance journalism chops, but because you have taken on a role not many of us would envy, a challenging role in these trying times. And what is it that you've taken on and why?
I've taken on the Ballad of George Santos. Somehow doesn't know him at this point. He is the current congressman for New York's 3rd Congressional District. He is a Republican, and he is a professional con man. And as a native daughter of the district where he serves, my parents still live there, and some of my very best friends live there. Ever since this story broke, I have been absolutely hooked.
It is. I think a lot of us have been hooked too. I was wondering, when I was, thinking about how to introduce your subject, I was like, should I use the name Katara the drag queen, George Santos the politician, George DeVolder the businessman, Anthony DeVolder the MAGA LGBTQ activist, or George or Anthony Zabrowski, the Jewish descendant of Holocaust survivors? Or George Santos, the son of the woman who was in her office in the World Trade Center? Or how do you like to refer to him? Con man?
I've kind of weirdly started just calling him George, as if he's someone familiar to me. It's just George. It's George, and he's become a part of my everyday life. And it's this weird kind of relationship because I have gotten a lot of new subscribers to my newsletter, and I have gone on TV a lot. And so I guess I have George to thank for that. But as far as what he's actually doing to the district and the world is an entirely different thing.
Yes. And I have a lot of questions, but as you know, this is also a podcast in which I bake, and sometimes my guests bake with me, but I think you're too deep into the George Santos affair to even think about baking at this time. I'd rather you were digging. And So today I am, for those playing along at home and for you playing along at home, and you have said you are willing to try these at some point. So I want to know what you think.
Not a good baker, but I'm a good baked good eater. So as long as that works for you.
It totally works for me. And it's a skill set that I appreciate. Today I am making a chewy, I'm trying out a slew. I'm infatuated with the chocolate chip cookie, and I'm trying out loads of different recipes. I have 2 different batches of dough in front of me. One is made with melted butter, and it's supposed to make a very gooey, chewy cookie. What kind of chocolate chip person are you? Cookie.
I like it a little crispy on the outside and soft on the inside, which is hard to achieve, but when it's right, it's right.
I should probably be making these for you, which is the other batch that I have ready here. I made them with confectioner's sugar, so they're tender. That sound like, don't you want your cookies to be tender and loving? And they get crispy on the outside, so there's that. Anyway, so I'm going to be scooping while you're scooping, giving us the scoop. I'd love to know, as we kick this off, what do the people in your district think? How are they feeling about all this?
They're really disturbed by it. As I've written a bit, knowing the district as I do, they're not used to being in the spotlight, particularly for their congressional representation. They've had a kind of stretch of pretty low-key representatives. I mean, there was some redistricting that went on, 10 years ago. But before that, at least my part of the district where I grew up was represented by a Republican. But he had been there for like almost 30 years. So he was kind of just like flying under the radar. Like everyone knew him, but it was fine. And then when it was redistricted, they got a Democrat. And then it's been 2 Democrats since then. And they were both very, I keep using the word unremarkable. It's my nice way of saying they didn't do a whole lot. And it's really interesting because it's a very wealthy district. It's a very well-educated district. It's right adjacent to New York City. In fact, it includes a small part of New York City. And so people there are just not used to having this kind of attention. And now they're like, wait, we're on the national stage for a really embarrassing reason because we elected a guy who lied about everything.
And have you talked to people who voted for him who have regrets or who think, hey, whatever?
No. The people who think, hey, whatever, I think are staying pretty silent right now because he is the third rail of politics and no one wants anything to do with it. There was a whole press conference last week with local Republican leaders calling on him to resign. And I've never seen anything like that. And I never thought in my lifetime I would ever see anything like that. And so his supporters, they're deleting their Instagram posts with him. They're like really trying to distance themselves, but it's like, guys, the FEC reports are still there. We know.
Right. Because if you are like into local politics and you are now tarred with the brush of letting him happen, how do you, the world of politics has changed and, people are very forgiving, obviously. How did we get George Santos?
We got George Santos by a few factors. The district has reddened over the last few years, in the years of Trump. Trump had a huge influence on the area just because it is adjacent to New York City, and there's a lot of financial types and a lot of people who are in his orbit. And, whether or not they think he's a good person or well-spoken, they respect his money and his wealth. And I think that speaks to, and I think that speaks to the language of a lot of people who live in this district. George Santos set out to create this sort of avatar of what the perfect New York third candidate should be. And that's a finance bro, that's someone who is a college athlete, and that's someone whose mom was in 9/11. Kind of taking down the list of ways to be relatable. And of course, being Jewish in a very Jewish district.
Right. I just happen to be a Holocaust survivor Jewish. It's not even like we were just sitting around in Long Island Jewish. It was no.
Yeah, really. Not just like high holidays.
Yeah. I'm putting the cookies in the oven. Hold on 1 second. Sorry. At some point, remind me, because those should be undercooked. It sounds sort of hilarious. It sort of sounds like a joke on us, really, that we fell for it. So, but do you feel like the joke will ever be on him? Like, do you think it will? There has been some backlash, but here he is. Today, he is on 2 committees, none of them with national security information that, could possibly be compromised by his lying pathological self, according to his lying pathological self, Kevin McCarthy. But where do you see this going?
I find it really hard to believe that he'll serve out his entire term because we're less than 2 weeks into his term and look at the clip of the news about him. But I also think he'll be fine. There have been so many scammers and liars in especially Republican politics, but let's be real, all politics who landed on their feet. And I was actually thinking about Anthony Scaramucci, another Long Islander, making us proud.
Yep.
He became a punchline because he served such a short time as a press secretary for Donald Trump, and he became a measurement of time, one Scaramucci. And then in my research about George Santos, I was looking at his old company that would put on these kind of financial seminars. And there was Scaramucci listed as one of the keynote speakers at an event that they had just last month. And he is like a crypto kingpin now, and he's speaking all over, and he's tweeting inspirational quotes, and he's doing fine. So if he can do it, I feel like there's hope for literally anyone.
And that, my friend, is the lesson. The Democrats in your district are not to be overlooked, right? As people who validated George Santos by not doing anything about him, right? If people within the Republican Party, apparently, is this true, kind of knew that something was not quite right with George Santos, didn't the Democrats have some sense of that?
They've been trying to play both sides of it. They initially, when the first story came out in mid-December, they said, we knew, and we tried to sound the alarm, and media wouldn't. And the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Committee, did put out a report about Santos before the election, and it did detail some of the concerns about him. However, they obviously did a horrible job marketing it and pitching it to places and making people understand why it's important. I mean, there were so many things going on in this election, and Democrats were just holding on for dear life. But they felt really comfortable in this district because it was Biden won it by a nice margin, and it's been represented by Democrats. So it was considered possible for Republicans, but it wasn't considered particularly vulnerable. So the fact that George Santos won by 7 points was just, it was one of the biggest shocks of the entire election. And so the Democrats in the district, they said, we tried, we knew some of this. The fact is, a story came out the other day that George Santos's own campaign ran a pretty standard background check on him. And they found out that he had been married to a woman for 8 years. And while I don't think that's the most important lie that he's told or the thing he just didn't mention, I think it's one of those things that's really easy for people to digest, to understand why saying you're an out and proud gay man and who's married to a man who's actually married to a woman. And so the fact that they couldn't find that and leverage that is really concerning to me and makes me not believe anything they said.
Right, which is a bad place for them to be in, since we're staring at somebody who was just elected who we can't believe anything they said, right?
And his opponent has gone on this press tour since this has all happened because, everyone wants to. I actually don't even understand the purpose of him going on this tour, to be perfectly honest. But I think for him, he's trying to set himself up as, if there's a special election, if Santos resigns, he thinks he'll be the candidate, which is hilarious because he's never going to be the candidate. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I guess crazier things have happened, but I really don't see that happening. And
why don't you see it happening?
Because his whole campaign was asleep at the wheel, and they missed a million red flags about maybe the craziest politician we've ever had. And he had a lot of money. It wasn't like they had no money to pay for opposition research. His campaign raised $3 million. If you can't find a good fraction of these lies and use them to your benefit, then you don't deserve $3 million.
Do you want a great book idea? I'll give it to you here on the air right now. Nobody can steal it. Okay. It's Marissa to Marissa. Just maybe like give me like a mention in the forward or something, or I'll write the forward. Okay. Here's the idea, which is you said George Santos, one of the craziest politicians of our time. You know what would be great? A book all about the craziest, most out there politicians of our time. And it would be short, bite-sized chapters and really say a whole heck of a lot about America.
I already have a title for it. You ready? Head Case of State.
I think you could have that proposal on my desk in about 2 weeks. Okay. My agent, if you're listening, pick this up. I mean it. I think it would be a great book. It would be so fascinating because he is an extreme example, but we have had was he from Louisiana? His last name was Governor Hogg. I mean, he named his daughter I'm a Hog. And was also like a character, you know.
Louisiana could have its own book.
It's true. Fair enough. It's true. The southern section of it. I mean, Calvin Coolidge had a raccoon as a pet. But anyway, this is my I used to work at Nickelodeon, and we would always, at Nickelodeon magazine, and we'd spend a lot of time creating these lists of fun facts about the presidents you never knew. And that was one of the ones that stuck in my head.
That is a fun fact. More presidents should have raccoons. That's my professional opinion.
I totally agree with you. Let's get into some of the weeds of George Santos. We can wash afterwards. I want to go back into some of these this guy was involved in a Ponzi scheme. I mean, why should I even go deep into it, right? You know, he worked for Harbor City, which the SEC said they were a Ponzi scheme.
Confirmed.
Okay. And then what happened to him? What did he do?
He was not implicated in the Ponzi scheme. He was not named in the lawsuit against them. So technically, in that case, his hands are clean. However, there have been stories in the last few days coming out that he was actively pitching the company to investors, including Andrew Intrater, who is the cousin of a Russian oligarch, Victor Beckelsberg. I need to draw a flowchart for everyone. But anyway, that's all to say that he was a very active member of this team, and he was getting people to invest their money in Harbor City Capital when he knew that it was a Ponzi scheme. And so, again, it's like everything with him is like he's adjacent to wrongdoing, and he's like almost doing something illegal, but he has some like plausible deniability. And it's so every story is kind of tiptoeing around it. It's like he did something not great, but we can't say if it was technically illegal.
That was exactly the phrase I was going to use. It's just, he's adjacent to a Ponzi scheme. He's adjacent to criminal liability. He's adjacent, he's so shifty. He also claims to have made a lot of money in the DeVolder. Was it with DeVolder? Is that? Yeah. And how did he make the money? Like, where are his finance bro skills?
We have no idea. It's very unclear. And that's the hottest story right now. Pardon me. That's the hottest story right now that people are trying to chase. Where did that money come from? There was just this sudden infusion. When he ran for Congress in 2020, he reported an annual income of $55,000. And then 2 years later, he was reporting over $1 million and got all this money from his campaign, and no one knows where it came from.
This episode is brought to you by Fandango. People say fans are too distracted these days, but the truth is, when a great movie hits the screen, you show up, you stay glued, invested, part of the story. And without fans like you, there'd be no cinema magic, no shared moments. So head to Fandango.com to get tickets, stream, or rent or buy top movies and series. Fandango loves fans.
People are full of surprises, especially when you travel together. Thankfully, Vrbo is not. When you book a Verbo, you get Verbo Care and 24/7 live support, so your house doesn't surprise you like your friends might. If something's not as described or doesn't work, Verbo's there. Real people, real support, anytime. Book today on the Verbo app. If you know, you Verbo. Terms apply. See verbo.com/trust for details.
That's fascinating. Do we have any leads? Any ideas where it might be coming from? What happened?
It's just a lot of forensic accounting that needs to be done, I think, and that is definitely above my pay grade. So, and my skill set, very, very. But yeah, there hasn't been a solid lead yet on where it came from.
This reminds me, I spent of the Madoff documentary that's on Netflix right now. Have you watched
Not yet.
it? Okay, that's your afternoon. Like that's your afternoon. Okay, just spend a little time watching it. It is. I thought I knew everything there was to know about Bernie Madoff. He's a shyster, and he was a con man, and people fell for it and lost lots of money. Absolutely true. But the people who supported him unknowingly, which has got to be a farce, because all of these people were financial. Many of the people who invested in him, who kept him afloat, were financial geniuses. They were very, very skilled at what they do, so they can't have not have known that Bernie promised a sure thing. You don't have to know math to know that the stock market is not a sure thing.
I mean, it takes a village to run a Ponzi scheme.
That's the other book. It takes a village to run a Ponzi scheme.
No, it's true. I mean, I've been going back and forth a lot since focusing on this story about whether he was sort of this useful idiot who fell in with the wrong crowd and who was just vulnerable and wanted to be famous and powerful.
Yeah.
Or he's actually a pretty smart guy who knew what he was doing and had a lot of other people helping him get to where he wanted to be. And I was definitely leaning towards the former. And now I'm like starting to think the latter. I think he knew a lot of what he was doing. And I think he's maybe a bit smarter than we would have guessed based on the insane lies that he told.
The pathological liars I've known, which haven't been a lot, but I've known them, have all been brilliant people, just with a profound sense of inadequacy.
Yeah, I had a very dear friend years ago, and yeah, she was very, very smart, and it was one of those things like, wow, what wasted potential here. Like if you were just honest and pursued things honestly, you'd actually be really successful. But yeah, it's. I mean, I don't want to get into any like armchair psychology, but there's something not right with him, and he is obviously fulfilling some sort of need by lying about his entire life, which apparently he's been doing for a really long time, according to, this person I spoke to yesterday.
So this is, we can expect that in your latest Substack, I think.
Yeah, that was the one that came out last night, actually, with Eula Rochard. She's the drag queen in Brazil. He knew George as a young man when he was, maybe not fully out as gay to his family, but he was making community in his city where he lived. And it sounded like he had a really nice network of people, which kind of bums me out because it's very sad. And he in these photos, he looks happy. He looks like he's having a really good time. And his old friend told me that he really enjoyed it. He had a good time. But his desire to be rich and famous and powerful just overtook him, and he left behind this nice life for this complete mess.
In a world where we can Photoshop things easily, we're sure that picture of him in drag is him. As sure as we can be is of him in drag.
Yes, it's been confirmed by other news outlets.
That's the sad part in all of this, is that here was a guy who was seemingly very happy, according to other sources, and kind of, I would say, threw it all away, but he's in Congress and I'm not.
Right. Yeah. Sold his soul. He allowed himself to align with some of the very worst people in the world. He aligned with Steve Bannon, and one of his staffers is a former staffer for Bannon's podcast. So he's not just like dipping his toe in the fascist stuff. He's like all in. And so it's like you can feel bad for him to a point and remember that he is a human being, which I think the drag thing is sort of like humanizes him. It reminds you that he was at one point just a teenager who enjoyed doing drag in Brazil. All these years later, he has completely changed his life, and he made a choice. There was a fork in the road, and he made a choice, and here he is.
It's kind of concerning. They're trying to oust him now, like Richie Torres is sort of leading the charge. What do you know about that? Do you think that they will have the chance to be successful? I'm opening the oven door now, by the way.
I don't see it being successful. I feel like that effort is a little ineffectual, if I'm being honest. Like this legislation that he's drafted, it's called the Santos Act, and it's supposed to punish people for lying on their FEC documents, which is fine. It just all seems kind of like a stunt. And it was like, why weren't you doing this before? Why do you have to do the acronym? Like it doesn't ring true to me. And also it doesn't, like he did it with Daniel Goldman, who happens to be my new congressman. And aside from them, I don't see a lot of people rallying around it. So I don't think most of their colleagues are too impressed by this effort.
Yeah, I wonder if some of it is the colleagues not wanting to be called out for not noticing that George Santos was a fraud.
Or for their own lies. I mean, think about...
Wait, politicians? Wait, break this down for me. Break it down for me.
We just broke some news. I think that they're terrified. And I mean, as I've been carrying through every little detail of this guy's life, I think about if we did this with every single member of Congress, imagine the things we would find. And no one else wants that. And so it's setting up a tricky situation where they're like, well, background checks for thee, but not for me.
Right. And I think some of us citizens, and maybe you fall into this category yourself, spend a lot of time using self-deprecation as a way of trying to move ourselves forward, which, by the way, people, turns out at my great age, I can tell you, hasn't been that effective. But we spend a lot of time sort of playing things down, right? And then there's the other side of these people. And I think that's what is so unnerving for those of us who spend a lot of our time going, oh no, I can't tell this person that I had this role, even though I really did, but it was never really official, and I don't.
For this year, this is my personal goal, is to be more shameless. And I think that the people who are the most shameless should have the most shame because they usually have the least to actually offer. And I want the people who have actual things and actual backgrounds to stand on to be really proud of themselves. And it's only a few weeks into 2023, but I already see it paying dividends. And so if people could leave with anything from this episode, I want them to be a little bit more shameless.
And what does being shameless mean to you?
That means not being afraid to share your accomplishments, to reach for a goal that may seem a little bit lofty, but is still within the realm of possibility, and to just not psych yourself out of it. You never know until you try. You never know until you ask. And I think the worst thing that someone can say is no. It's very rare that someone's going to be like, you're ridiculous for even asking. And that's what we're all afraid of. But most people are much kinder than that. And so and this is as much for me as it is for anyone else, but just to be proud of yourself, because if you're not, who else is going to be?
You know what? Marissa's Unite. That is, I feel I have a big fat grin on my face. I am so happy. Let's make that our goal. Everybody out there in podcast land, make it your goal. That's brilliant. We really should be, because I think a lot of us we are so tired of like watching people who are constant schemers and liars, like, Donald Trump, not getting nothing bad happening to them seemingly, right? Or waiting. And living the life of Riley or whoever at Mar-a-Lago while the wheels of justice turn so slowly. And I'm afraid to get a speeding ticket, or, oh my God, I'm paying my taxes. But, we forgot to, we better, and worrying down to the tiniest detail that we did the right thing. So we should be doing the right thing and be proud of it and be shameless.
And follow the law, but
Oh, yeah, that's absolutely true. I have an accountant and that's what I'm saying. I do follow the law. I don't break the speed limit.
The IRS has the nerve to be like, oh, your filing was a little off. Can you send us $300? And I'm like, can you ask Jeff to pay my bill? I mean, please, you're coming to me, you're nickel and diming me for $300. Okay.
Exactly. I stop for pedestrians in crosswalks, okay? Even if they don't want to cross the street, I still wait and make them cross the street. No, I'd like to go do the list of shamelessnesses of George Santos. And I want to just go through the details and you tell me what's the truth, okay? So Kitara, which is a great name, the drag queen, true or false?
True.
George DeVolder, great businessman.
False.
George DeVolder, who is he?
No one knows.
So how does a George DeVolder exist?
How do any of the great scammers exist? I think that they find people who are credulous and they play on people's kind of insecurities, but also flatter them. And they're master manipulators. I mean, you have to be in order to get elected to Congress based on his fake resume.
The idea that he had a different last name is strange to me.
Well, I think that from what I believe I've looked at a official documentation, a passport. I need to confirm it, but based on that, his full name is George Anthony DeVolder Santos. So he has a lot of names, and that's not abnormal, especially in Latin American names. A lot of people have both of their mother and their father's names and a middle name. That's fine. But what's unusual is him mixing and matching them and having aliases. I mean, what kind of normal person has aliases?
That's exactly what I'm driving at. And you're right. It's completely normal to have all those names, but you use them.
Right. And typically, people are kind of nitpicking, well, he didn't really lie. And it's but yeah, he did. If you go by one thing, your whole, childhood and adolescence, and then all of a sudden you completely change it, there has to be a reason.
Yeah. And if it's above board, just
right.
Tell us.
Yeah. If there could be a perfectly reasonable explanation, but the fact that he switched it so many times, I mean, I've seen every permutation. There's been Anthony DeVolder, there's been George DeVolder, there's been Anthony Santos, and George Santos now, and it's just exhausting. And so it's I mean, I know we put a lot of stock in people's names, but we were talking about our names at the top, right? And your name has meaning to you. And so when you're constantly changing what your name is, it must be really hard to have any sense of your own personal identity.
Beautifully said. It's absolutely right. Absolutely right. George Santos's mother? What do we know?
We know that she lived in Brazil, that she worked as a housekeeper at one point and as a home health aide. We know that she died in 2016. And we know that she definitely didn't die in 9/11 and in fact was not in the United States at all during that time period. And that's about it. I mean, she's the one that he claimed had Ukrainian ancestry and that her parents fled the Holocaust, but that's not true, obviously.
That's not true. I mean, do we know if he has Jewish ancestry?
He does not.
He does not. Okay. Okay. Anything else that we don't know yet about him that we what are you digging at now? What do we think? What do we think is next on the bingo card? Let's put it that way, because people have asked me to create a bingo card. I am on Twitter. So what should we put on the
bingo card next? Do you want to speculate?
I am hoping that his campaign finances will be the next big thing. As much as the drag story and the dog story and all this are.
The dog story. Can we is that, and we have that confirmed as
Yes, that was confirmed. The veteran was interviewed by NBC News and confirmed by another veteran. Awful story. I mean, I just you don't.
Can you quickly run through it for anybody who's had who doesn't know?
So the backstory is that George Santos had a pet rescue nonprofit, or he claimed to. There's no evidence that it was actually a registered nonprofit, but he ran some sort of organization that helped animals in need. And so in 2016, when this disabled veteran needed help with his dog had an enormous tumor and she needed it removed, he couldn't pay for the surgery, so someone connected him with George Santos. I don't know what name he was going by at that time. So he was connected to him, and George set up a GoFundMe for him, and they raised the $3,000 needed. And then George basically absconded with the money, and this man's dog, Sapphire, died shortly thereafter because her tumor was never operated on. And he said he contemplated suicide as a result of the loss of his very beloved dog. So it's just pretty much one of the worst things you could possibly do to another person.
Right. If you're, if you're going to spend all that time creating a persona for yourself of good things that you've done, and, like George Santos has picked from all the best you could do, what possesses you to do something like that? And it was just one of those stories when it came out, I'm like, this is another, this is too awful to be true.
Yeah, it does have that feeling. But as far as, he claims, George, that it's not true, but he claims everything's not true. So he already claimed that the drag story was not true this morning, but
There is something funny about a Republican being a drag queen in this day and age of Republicans being so terrified of drag queens.
It is. And that's the whole thing. I don't care what he does. Have fun, but don't support people who are targeting violence at drag shows all over the country. Come out and say something. At least the very least you could do at this point is say, as someone who is part of the drag community, I do not condone these attacks, but he knows where his bread was buttered, at least. Now he has no butter.
He has no butter. I was listening to NPR this morning, as a liberal in the suburbs does, talking about a new kind of gaseous entity that was found adjacent, there's that word, to our galaxy. And so it's an incredible find. And the man that they interviewed, the expert that they interviewed, described this gaseous entity as a nebulosity. And I want to give you that word as well to describe George Santos.
Love that. A nebulosity.
Take it, use it. He's a nebulosity. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Do you have any do you want to make any pronouncements before we go? Any thoughts? Any deep thoughts?
Man, I can't predict what's going to happen with this guy. It's really a one day at a time sort of situation. Mm-hmm. So just stay tuned and sign up for my newsletter at thehandbasket.substack.com.
As in going to...
Helena.
I am loving your Substack, and I've recommended it to my Substack users. So I think everybody should join in, because your reporting is very deep, and it goes beyond some of the more casual stuff that we see on TV. That's sort of oh my gosh, and it really gets to the nitty gritty of things. So I appreciate that. Okay, let's all go to the handbasket. I'm going to put some cookies in the handbasket. Thank you so much for being on today, and keep up the good work. You can follow the great reporting of Marisa Kabas on her Substack called Handbasket, and on Twitter, her handle there is Marisa Kabas, and I say it with one S because it's MARISAKABAS. And you can find the recipe for the gooey chocolate chip cookies on my Substack at marissarothkopf.substack.com. Have a great week.
This episode is brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. No matter how you do game day, on the couch, in the crowd, or manning the snack table, Athletic Brewing fits right in. With a full lineup of non-alcoholic beer styles, you can enjoy bold flavors all game long. No hangovers, no buzz, no subbing out for water in the second half. Stock the fridge for tip-off with a variety of non-alcoholic craft styles available at your local grocery store or online at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, fit for all times.